Well, Joe Franke, it's fine that I met you finally. We've been talking back and forth, and I am so excited to have you here because I had a great interest, or I have a great interest in the Warrens. The You indicated to me that you met them quite a long time ago when you were about 18 years old.
Yeah.
What got you? I find that anybody who has a strong interest in the paranormal from a younger age generally has it because they've had their own experiences. That's with me, that's with you now. And so can you tell me about how you started to get interest
Well, sure.
in the paranormal?
You know, I was 18 when I met Ed and Lorraine. However, my history goes further back, if I may, and this is something I haven't told you yet. When I was 3 years old, 3.5 to be exact, I had what I believe, or what I recall as a divine experience. And what I mean by that is I was named after my maternal grandfather. He was Joseph Martin Quinn. I'm Joseph Martin Franke. And my grandfather was very close to him. I have some memories of him, but I was 3.5 at the time. So my grandfather used to pick me up sometimes before work, like 5 in the morning. He'd come get me
Oh my God!
and take me to church because he wanted to
church
spend time with me.
you, and that
my
was
grandfather worked for the railroad
Yeah.
for many, many years. And you know, he'd have to be in early, but he'd pick me up on the weekends. I remember riding in his, he had won a blue Chevy Impala from one of the local carnivals. And I remember back then there was no safety seats and stuff like that.
Oh yeah. You keep your kids in a strawberry basket in the back. I remember that.
I remember
too.
sitting in the front seat. It was a bench seat.
Yeah.
And I remember trying to look over. I couldn't see over the dashboard because I was a youngster.
Right.
And I was a hellion when I was a kid. And
You probably for a long time.
I still have my uncle left. My mom is passed now, unfortunately. But my uncle came to my lecture last week in Beacon Falls. I was at the library. And my uncle lives in Beacon Falls. So he came down and he was recollecting. He's like, yeah. He's like, my father used to take the switch to you. You know, those old tomato steaks?
Yep,
you know? And I said, well, you know, Uncle Joe, I said, I deserved it. I said, I deserved it. So I was very close to my grandfather. He was a very devout, religious man. And every night before bed, my grandfather would retire to his bedroom, and there was a chair in the bedroom, and he would sit and read passages from the Bible. Just read a few pages, and sometimes he'd fall asleep. My grandmother would have to wake him up. Come on, Joe, it's time to go to bed. So one night, it was a Monday night, I remember vividly what happened. My mom filled in the details, and I asked my mom some years ago, I said, could you please put this in an email for me? Because someday, Mom, you're not going to be here.
Right, you want the
And
history.
I want from your perspective what happened. My dad had passed back in '94, so he was long gone. So she said, sure. So back in 2013, I remember, because I still have the email. But from my perspective, I remember I was asleep. There was my brother and sister and I were in one room. My sister was in a crib. My brother was in the bunk bed above me. And I came walking out into the living room, and Monday Night Football was on. That's how my mother remembers. And I said, what, Mom? You know, what, Mommy? You know, somebody called Joe. Somebody called Joe. I heard this voice calling my name, but I was sound asleep. I was sleepwalking. And my parents looked at each other, and they kind of shrugged it off and said, you put him back to bed. She puts me back into bed. A minute or so later, I come back out. I get right back up, and I come back out. Same thing. What, Mommy? I hear Joe. Joe, what are you calling? And the second time she puts me back into bed and the phone rings. And it was my grandmother. And she's like, I can't wake up your father. I think he's passed away. So, you know, this is true as I'm sitting here. My grandfather passed away. What happened was he was reading the Bible, as he did every night, and he had fallen asleep. And they believe he had a heart attack in his sleep, and he passed away. He was only 69 years old.
My bad.
That's okay.
I forgot to tell you, this is the first time I've done that in a long
Probably
time.
the spirits at work.
Yeah, you're right.
So, you'd be fine. I was on a phone call yesterday, and I started talking about a case. The phone died.
Yeah.
But anyway, we can get to that later. So, so what I feel, I remember vividly, like it was a minute ago, seeing this light and hearing this beautiful male voice saying, "Joseph, come with me. Come with me.
Come with me.
Yeah.
Well, come with
me
to where he was, or to.
Well, what I believe is it was God calling my grandfather.
Oh, his name was Joseph.
Joseph.
Franke.
I was
Okay,
named after him.
Okay, you did say
Yeah,
that.
so he was Joseph Quinn Franke. I'm
Okay,
Joseph
okay,
Martin.
okay.
So I named my son Joseph Quinn Franke.
Okay.
So not the same middle name, but
Right,
in honor
right,
of my mother, and it
right.
made my mother so happy.
And you were so close to your grandfather. You
I
may have heard
was.
that.
I mean, I remember him somewhat, but I was 3.5 because
Mm-hmm.
I was born in '68. He passed away. I was in February '68. He died November of '71.
Mm-hmm.
And but I was so close to him. You know, I guess I was his favorite. God, I don't know why.
You're a pip, probably.
You know, I
You
was.
appreciated that.
You know, and I believe, and I know in my heart and soul, that I heard the Lord calling him. And at the moment that he passed away, and that's when I would come out and say, hey, somebody's calling me. So my mother put this in an email, and I have it, and I tell the story at my lectures. And then they say, well, fast forward from there 15 years, now I'm 18 years old. I graduate Notre Dame High School in West Haven in June of '86. Not sure exactly the date. I don't even know if I was there. And then that fall, I think it was in September, Laurel and I, who were just dating at the time, my wife, she looked in the local paper and she's like, oh, the Warrens are lecturing down in North Haven at the Holiday Inn. Would you like to go? I said, yeah, it sounds like fun. You know, I had heard of the Warrens. I knew the name. I knew the connection with Amityville and all that stuff, but I had never met them. So it was only, you know, a couple exits down the highway. We get there, and Lorraine is at the table, not unlike this one, and she was taking the tickets or selling the tickets. I think it was $10 or $15, whatever it was. And she looked at me. I remember her cocking her head to the side like this, and she's looking at me. Almost in a way you'd look at somebody and say, I know this person.
I know this, yeah.
I know that. I know them,
Recognition.
but I don't. So she's like, honey, have we met before? She called everybody honey. She was a sweetheart. And I said, no, Lorraine. I said, I've heard a lot about you and Ed. I've seen you on television, and I've read about you in print media and heard you on the radio. I said, I'm fascinated with your work, you know. And she's looking at me. She goes, well, there's people piling up behind me.
you.
So she's like, honey, she goes, there's a reason why you're here tonight. She says, make sure you come and see Ed and I after the show. So I'm okay. So, you know, Laurel and I are sitting there listening to the presentation, and I'm fascinated, but I'm also thinking, I can't keep a thought in my head. I'm thinking to myself, what do you want to talk to me about? So at the end of the lecture, Lorraine's so sweet. She would stay to the very end to answer everyone's questions and sign autographs. And Ed would be packing up with Tony saying, come on, Lorraine, let's go. Come on, I'm hungry.
I'm hungry.
You know, well, one of the things we used to do is after every lecture and or investigation, we would all convene at like a local diner and go over, if it was a case, we'd go over the notes of what happened that evening, make sure we're all on the same page. I've been through a lot of diners, a lot of cases, a lot of lectures. So I try to continue that tradition. So we go to the diner, and I'm sitting across from Lorraine, and I know Laurel was here, Ed, and then Tony, their son-in-law, and she's holding my hand, and she's looking at me, and she told me at that time what she was doing. She goes, I'm reading your aura, that supernatural glow that
that
emanates
glow.
from all of us. We all
I
have
have
an
seen
aura.
that on someone, yes.
And she's like, I can tell by your aura that you were meant to do this work. She said, would you like to come and work with us and become one of our students? And, you know, without skipping a beat, I'm like, absolutely, yeah. I was so excited.
Right.
So Laurel and I both went together as a team and worked with them for a few years until, you know, we got married and my wife became pregnant with my son. She's like, just tell me about it. And I said, no.
I got a baby.
She more or less took the notes,
Yeah,
you know,
right,
and assisted Lorraine with things. But, you know, she wasn't really an investigator per se. But they taught me everything, or a lot, I would say, of they poured their knowledge and expertise into me, which I greatly appreciate.
Well, if you don't know, the Warrens were a wonderful couple. Ed Warren was a demonologist. They were Catholic, and Lorraine was you said a clairvoyant, and they went on a lot of things like the Amityville Horror House. There's another house in Southington that used to be a funeral parlor that the family did not know when they bought it, and it was terribly, in a bad way, terribly haunted. And so they worked on those kind of cases, very well known around the world, the Warrens. And because I jumped right in because I was so excited that Joe was here. Joe is the CIO, the Chief Investigative Officer of the Warren Foundation, right? The Warren Legacy Foundation of Paranormal Resources. And he is also the Regional Northeast United States Director. And that's why he's here today. He has had a lot of training with the Warrens, and unfortunately they're both gone now. I don't know that Lorraine passed away that long.
Lorraine passed away in April of 2019.
Oh, 2019.
I can't believe it's been that long.
Yeah, that long. I just remember seeing it. So this is a very well-founded, important foundation, and the Warrens, again, are well-known, and you told me there are now chapters all over the world, not just in Connecticut.
Well, it's one foundation, but the foundation is global.
Right.
So the foundation was something Lorraine wanted. And my good friend Christopher McKinnell is her biological grandson. I was their adopted grandson. And if Chris was here, he tells everybody, he's like, my grandfather loved you more than he loved me.
Oh, no.
But I said, well, Chris lived in Pennsylvania for many years, so he wasn't like around.
Right. Yeah, right.
But, you know, a lot of times when I was working with them. But Chris and Lorraine, you know, worked together to establish the foundation. I helped, you know, I was just, you know, part of that, do anything they needed me to do. So the foundation was basically founded in 2014. We're still in our infancy stages. We're trying to grow. Unfortunately, with all the paranormal people out there, or so-called, we kind of get lost in the mix. But we're a serious organization. I turned down the show Ghost Hunters.
Okay.
You know, the guys that do the show Ghost Hunters, they're great. I love the show. I mean, they're good guys. But back in 2002, I got a call from a producer at Pilgrim Films in Los Angeles, and they wanted my friend and I. No, I'm not saying I would have gotten the show, but they offered to fly us out and do a couple of pilot episodes. And I thought about it, and I had 3 young children. My twin daughters were only babies at the time, and my friend had 4 young sons. And we thought about it, and we said, you know, we appreciate it, but with our jobs and our families, it's not a good time.
Right.
You know, who knew? Right? But I have no regrets.
Right.
That's, you know, I've been told I have a face for radio.
It would have taken you away from your family an awful lot. Of you.
Family comes first.
Right. You know, and you had such babies. Now, and I do want you back here again sometime in the spring if we can do it. But what was your, did you work on the Amityville case with them?
Well, no, it's funny you should mention that because people are like, wow, Joe, that was cool. You were at Amityville? I said, no, I was 6 years old.
Oh, okay.
Amityville was 1974, 75.
Wow.
I think it was 75 when the Lutz family moved in.
I didn't realize it was that long ago.
Yeah.
My God, time's flying. So what was your most, I don't want to say important case, because if somebody's being plagued, and every case is important then. They want it to stop if they want it to stop. I'll just give you a quick, for instance, in my own home, a lot of paranormal happenings that my 2-year-old grandson shared and told me all about. Also told me we were together in another lifetime and I left him. Talk about guilt. But we had a lot of activity in our house. I know why it was. We had a ton of deaths within 2 years. And I remember I asked my husband, who was in the den, to stay there till I bought the kitten in to clip its nails. And as I walked down the hallway towards the den, I saw him heading into the bedroom. Same size, same shape, but it was just a dark figure. And I said, hey, I asked you to stay here. And he said, I'm where you left me. And then I went, huh? And then he was there, and he said, my God, you even nag the dead. You know? So I've had my own experiences. They weren't bad experiences, or I'd have been calling somebody real quick. I understood what was going on. Plus, I've had paranormal experiences my whole life. But what would you say was your most interesting? Okay, let's go with your most interesting case.
I just had most recently too. Back in June, we had a case come in through the foundation in Albany area of New York. Now, I typically don't go on cases myself with my health. I have some issues, but unless I'm really feeling good. But this one was a special case. It involved a double homicide, unfortunately.
A homicide?
Yeah, the father had murdered his wife and 5-year-old.
Oh, my God.
And this only happened 2 years ago.
Oh, my God.
So, and he had a 2-year-old that he also attacked, but the 2-year-old survived, thank goodness. The family just couldn't see how their brother could do this. And they said, Joe, could you please, we feel there's some kind of demonic presence in the house, their house.
Right.
Now, the house was vacant since the murders, but the family had been in there cleaning and stuff. Unfortunately, there was still evidence of, blood splatters.
That would be,
and
and
that was hard.
Sometimes don't understand to bring one of those teams in that do that cleanup at murder scenes.
They didn't, because I had asked them. I said, if you don't mind me asking, I asked, the sister-in-law who was our gracious host.
Yeah, they don't understand.
And
sometimes
I said, who cleaned up the scene? And she's like, we did. The family did.
Yeah, that's got to be.
And they did a good job, but there was still some.
You can't find everything in these. Yeah, that's terrible. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it.
But so the Northeast area. I'm the chairman of the board for the organization, which I'm just a figurehead. It doesn't really mean anything. Chief Investigative Officer basically means if any of our regional directors need help with a case anywhere, they call me.
Okay.
I consult with them.
Okay.
But this case was different. The family was very desperate. They wanted to either sell or rent the home, but they didn't. They couldn't do that in good conscience without showing the house was clear.
Right. Right.
So I said, I only have a few people locally, and by locally I mean within state. One researcher is very, very green, great historical researcher to do research stuff, but she didn't have a lot of paranormal experience. She lived up in upstate Vermont near St. Johnsbury, which is about 4.5 hour ride to the Albany area. And then another gentleman that's on the team that lives in Plattsburgh, which is a little closer. And then there's me. I'm 3 hours away, And then, so I said, listen, I promised, I said, I'll come up there myself. I said, I'll come up, We don't charge for what we do. I want to make that clear right from the get-go.
Right.
We do ask at times if people can cover our expenses.
Right.
I can't tell you how much debt I'm in over the last 40
No, I
years.
can understand.
But you know what? I'm happy to do it.
Yeah, and you're doing it out of a very the goodness.
Yeah.
You're doing it out of goodness, not to make.
Well, yeah, but I could tell. We did multiple Zoom calls with the family members, the brothers and the sister-in-law, and they were clearly terrified and concerned, and no one would enter the home on their own, and so I didn't know what I was going to be faced with. Now, demonic activity is very rare, and possession is rarer still. Hollywood television would have you believe that everything is demonic. And if you watch these YouTubers or these TV shows, the word demonic or demon is thrown around like it's nothing.
Right.
And it aggravates me.
Yeah.
But I stay quiet because I don't want people to start attacking me, and say, well, what do you know? Oh, let me tell you what I know.
You do.
but I'm not like that.
I
I tell our folks, we have meetings with our members. We have a whole member meeting, and I'll tell them, be kind, be gentle, and be humble. I said, because if any one of you starts to get an ego like I see on TV or on YouTube, I will personally remove you from the foundation.
Right.
This is about carrying on the Warren legacy.
Right.
And I said, we hold ourselves to the highest standard. I said, I know there are haters out there. There's people that throw stuff up on social media. I said, do not engage that.
Right.
I said, if you see something like that, let me know.
Yeah.
And I've done this.
Yeah.
I've sent a private message to that person that made the post. And I said, look, I'm Joe Franke, and then I said, here's my personal phone number. Yeah. You want to know about the Warrens? Call me. I'll tell you, I'll give you whatever information that I can about them. But don't go on social media and talk about people that, number one, are no longer with us, and number two, you never met.
Right.
In most cases.
And so anyway, Joe, Ed and Lorraine have very good reputations. It wasn't that smeared.
Yeah, I mean,
after death.
So anyway, I digress a lot. So back to the story. So I went up. The family they couldn't afford to pay our expenses, and I said, no problem. I'm coming anyway. Don't worry about it. So I'm always like, well, how much is it going to cost us? I said, don't worry about it. I found a cheap hotel. I was up there for 5 days.
Wow.
I drove up there. I stayed up there for 5 days, and I was in the house a lot. And as soon as I walked in the house, usually when I walk in a place, and if there's something evil, I'm not going to even say demonic, but something negative.
Right.
Because you could have negative human spirits too.
Right.
Demonic spirits are entities that have never walked the earth in human form. Those are the real nasty ones. And I walked into the house and I said, I let out a sigh of relief. I remember I said, there's nothing evil here. Okay? But there was something. I felt and I conferred with six different psychic mediums that are in the foundation, independent of one another. Okay, they're just a tool or an instrument, I should say. I don't ever base a whole case on what one of the mediums tell me.
Right.
It's almost like you throw a 1,000-piece puzzle on the table, and you're like, okay, let's see what fits.
Pick and choose.
Let's see what fits. So independent of one another, they all concurred that it was the mother, the spirit of the mother was frantic, running around the house. Now I can feel it, but I'm not so cyclically in tune that I can hear her.
She didn't move on.
She didn't move on.
And was it because, did you say he had murdered a child, one of his children? Is it because they didn't meet?
Exactly.
Oh my God.
She was desperately searching for her children.
child.
She didn't know that the 5-year-old had passed over, and she didn't know where the 2-year-old was.
Right, yeah.
So all I had to do, and sometimes it is this simple. I sat down at the kitchen table, and right at my feet is where the 5-year-old had passed, which was very tough for me.
Yeah.
I love children. You know, I'm a father myself. My children are all adults
And
now.
nobody deserves that, especially a parent that they trust.
Yeah,
Nobody
but, I mean,
deserves that.
according to the story, the gentleman just snapped, and you know, for no reason. The family told me that they had dinner or whatever, you know, typical family night, and they said the only thing they could think of is their brother had COVID. So anyway, I said, well, give me a couple of days. I spent in the house, so I sat down in the kitchen, and I spoke aloud as I'm speaking with you now. To the spirit of the mother, and I addressed her by name, and I told her, I said, my name is Joe Franke. I was invited in here. I'm a friend of your family's. They invited me to come and help. Oh, geez, now it's my turn. I apologize.
No, that's okay. I forgot to tell you to turn it off, and I forgot to turn mine off. Howard's probably going to
do
slap
that right
me.
now. I apologize.
It's okay.
So I just spoke aloud to her, and I said, your son, and I said his name. I won't say it on camera. Well, I said, he is fine. He's on the other side waiting for you. I said, and your other son.
She didn't cross. That's why she
didn't
find
cross.
him. Yeah, okay.
She was frantically, because
What happened? Yeah.
my friends and my members are saying, Joe, she's there. She's just running around the house.
Oh.
She says, but she knows you're there, but she doesn't trust you. She doesn't know who you are.
Right, right.
So I said, please, if you'll just listen to me, I'll tell you who I am. I said, your husband's name. I said, he's in jail. He's never coming back. He's never going to hurt you again. Okay. So I guess she didn't realize she was dead.
Yeah.
She was passed. I said, so your son passed over. He's on the other side waiting for you. I said, your other son is living in Florida with relatives. He's fine. He recovered from his injuries. He's fine. You know. So it took a little work, a little convincing, but by the second day, the house was clear. She was gone.
But
she had passed over.
You know, and that's wonderful. You know what this is not anything paranormal. What drives me crazy is when somebody is upset and you kill your entire family, kill yourself first. I mean, you know why did
it's
that
a tragedy.
To me is evil.
It was a tragedy.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
you know, the gentleman, I mean, he did it.
Something, he did it. Now
you know, unfortunately, it's a tragedy for everyone. You got loss of life. Now his life is over.
And your children.
His
I mean, I don't
family.
understand how you could kill your children, no matter who you are.
Well, that's why the family thought that there was an issue with the home. Okay. Because there was some speculation about just a week before that they had some surprise guests show up at the house. It was a family member with two of her friends that they had never met. And, you know, these folks were from another country, so I guess their tradition is to welcome them in. They stayed a night or two, and then they left.
They thought maybe they bought something negative.
Well, not only that, but they believe the thought was, and this is getting from the family, they believed that there was some kind of satanic ritual performed, whether it be, I don't know, some kind of satanic altar. We didn't find any evidence of that.
Right. Well, they might have taken it with
However,
them. That's not something you leave behind.
Yeah, I know. But we were looking for maybe some wax from candles.
Right.
The family had been through the house so many times cleaning it up. They took just about all the belongings were in the two-car garage, piled up. There was some furniture strewn through the house, but I didn't find any evidence of that. I said, it doesn't really matter what I think. What matters is what I can prove. I said, so I didn't find any physical evidence of that. However, in the back of my mind, it's like, is it possible? Absolutely. So to answer the family, after the 5 days, I did a 5 or 6 page report of who was there, what we did, what we found, what we didn't find, and my recommendations. Now, some of the recommendations were natural. I tell people, don't always take the nuclear option and jump right to the demonic. If you have something going on in your home or your place of business that you can't explain, think about a natural explanation first, rather than supernatural. All right, and this is what television and movies today do to people. A lot of it's psychosomatic because they watch these TV shows.
Yeah, and then they get freaked out if a bottle cap pops off or something.
It's absolutely true. So I have to talk them back from the ledge.
Right.
And the first thing I do is say, stop watching these shows, and do not ever investigate your own home.
Right.
I got a woman now that's doing.
How do you feel about Ouija boards?
Yeah.
Okay, I think a lot of people bring.
That's the other thing about this. I was going to say, I have a whole lecture on Ouija boards. Ouija boards are not good. Ouija boards are a board game, yes, by Parker Brothers, a Hasbro company, whatever.
Right.
Shameless plug for them.
Right.
But it's a game. It's the intention and the free will that goes into it.
So you think it's the intention? I'm going to call somebody. I used one once. I will admit. Terrified me because it gave me correct information. Somebody broke into my house, and I was in the house, and I was washing. I was washing my face at the sink. It was very hot. It was August. I was out mowing the lawn in the back. Left the front door open. Missed the police report that people were going into houses when people were mowing at one part. Missed it entirely. But anyway, it's hot. I leave the mower running because I was a single mom. I had a cheap mower. I couldn't get it started again. Walk back around the house, and I'm splashing. This is what happened to, I tell people I hear voice, and I swear I do, and I do. So I'm splashing my face with cold water, and a voice said, in here, not mine, masculine voice, get up. And get up. And then it said, get up now. And a guy ran behind me as I had my face in the sink. I was in my clothes, okay? And out the door.
Oh, good. So he didn't confront you.
Thank God, because you know what had happened? He was locked in when I came in the front. I threw the bolts to the doors he could get into. But that's what I was afraid of. My God, I could have been raped. I was a young woman, 30-something. And so I thought, it freaked me out. I mean, you're not safe in your own house. Things went, I saw that he had been upstairs in my lingerie drawer and my jewelry, and I have a child, and, and so it freaked me out. So, I had a Ouija board. So this Ouija board kept giving me the name Evan, and there were two. That's what it kept saying, Evan. And I said to my daughter, do you know, and it was like a younger person, I could tell, because checks weren't taken, but cash was, credit cards weren't taken, but jewelry was. And she said, oh, there's a guy at school named Evan, but gee, Ma, he's a nerd. He's a real good guy. He's got high marks and all. And
those are the ones that usually is.
Well, it was, the guy's name was Evans, his last name.
Evans.
There were two. And I was with a friend over the weekend, and my daughter was away, and I said to my friend, I got to get home. This was after this, about 2 weeks after this happened. I got to get home. And she said, you're letting this run your life. Yeah. I said, no, I know I have to get home. My daughter was with my parents, and I'm starting to run red lights all the way home on a Sunday afternoon in August. Thank God there wasn't a lot of traffic. And I get home, and that person's crawling in my back window again. So
came back.
He came back. Whoa. And then I could tell the police, yes, that's definitely him. I knew who it was, But it's stuff that you have to listen to, and people, I've talked about that before. Like, I had talked to somebody, I said, do you ever do seminars about hearing voices? And she said, oh, yeah. And then I realized she deals with schizophrenic people. I said, I'm not schizophrenic. Yeah. I know. I have a voice I've heard throughout my life that has guided me.
Sure.
It's never done anything wrong. It's telling me, get up now. And it yelled at me. I'm like, get up now. Okay, I'm up. And then I felt somebody run behind me. It was him and out. So, yeah, it's not always... So I put the Ouija board away. It's like, oh, I don't know. How did it know? I didn't know it was somebody named Evans. How did it know? How?
And there's also, the Ouija board, and I don't want to insult anyone that uses them. I just want to tell them that in my experience of 40 years, nothing is ever good.
Nothing
come from Ouija board. The Ouija board is a form of divination, which is taught against by the Catholic Church.
I know that. Yeah.
The Ouija board, but it's not just the Ouija board. That just seems to be the most common form of divination. Divination being basically searching for knowledge of the future through supernatural means. And that could be tarot cards, horoscopes, astrology,
What do you get?
divining rods.
Yeah, divining rods. Yeah.
You know, anything like that. And I'm probably not popular with the people that use them. And I have a really good friend of mine that lives in Florida who is a Wiccan. And I'm like, that's fine, I respect that.
they're good
You're
witches.
a different,
Yeah.
you know, she's like, well, and we have fun jabbing at each other,
yeah.
but we have a presentation that we did in Florida back in September called To Ouija or Not to Ouija. And I said, well, you go first, ladies first. So, you know, she gave out some good points, you know, but, you know, she's like, well, we worship, you know, Wiccans, we worship the earth, the sun, the moon, nature. We worship nature. You know, the sun, water, wind, fire. I said, yeah, who made all that? And I pointed up, and she couldn't answer me.
I didn't want to
I
answer.
said, look, that's okay. However, you also worship goddesses and the great horned god.
Now, to me, the great horned god would be a very negative thing.
Well, because of the horns.
Because of the horns.
But to me, in my upbringing and my teachings, that is against the first commandment. Thou shalt not have false
Other
gods before me. Okay? So
Can't get rid of that in your Catholic schooling.
No.
That's just hammered right in.
no,
I know.
but you know, and so you know, when it was my turn, I said, disregard everything Heather just said.
Good.
So
Heather, get you
I
later.
talk about the Ouija board. I said, has anybody ever heard of the movie The Exorcist? Who hasn't, right?
Yeah.
The Exorcist came out in 1973.
Yeah,
the movie was
70s.
unbelievable for its time. It was done
Scary
so well.
as- Yeah.
And William Friedkin, I remember, because I've done a lot of research through the years, William Friedkin said in an interview, because somebody asked him, how real was it? He goes, we tried to keep the story as real
Really?
as we could. So when I lecture, I talk about that because for those of people who don't know this, The Exorcist was a true story based on a 14-year-old boy that lived in Cottage City, Maryland. He was
His aunt, wasn't his aunt very involved in Ouija?
Very close to his aunt, who was a spiritualist, who's basically someone who believes you can continue contact with spirits after they've passed. You know, that communication can still exist using this instrument. So she got her 14-year-old nephew involved with the Ouija board. So guess what happens? She passes away, and he's devastated, and he wants to continue to talk with her.
Contact her.
So he's using the Ouija board, And like I said earlier, it's all about intent and free will, okay? So by your own free will, you're using this and you're intending to conjure. You're intending to, you know, speak to the dead like a necromancer, you know? And that's not good because I call them victim souls because there's evil out there and it's ready to pounce. It's just waiting for that invitation. Okay.
Isn't there a part in the Bible that says, do not call spirits to you? They're everywhere. There's a passage saying, they are all around you.
Yeah.
Do not call them to you.
In many parts of the Bible, I know in Deuteronomy, it talks about this.
Deuteronomy. I knew I had read it somewhere, but I couldn't remember.
And in the Catholic Catechism of the Catholic Church, there's actually a whole section on divination and how it teaches against divination, and it's not good. And people may remember the movie that came out recently, The Pope's Exorcist. Father Gabriel Amorth, who was the Pope's exorcist
I was thinking
for 30 years.
They were training more exorcists in Rome.
Well, from what I understand, every diocese in the country has an exorcist. They don't tell you that,
Yeah,
but
I didn't
they
know
do.
that. Yeah.
But Father Amorth passed away in 2016, but from 86 to 2016, he was the chief exorcist in Rome. So there's also a movie called The Rite, R-I-T-E, short for The Rite of Exorcism. That was based on the life of Father Gary Thomas, who is an exorcist out in the San Francisco area. He's about 68, 70 years old now, but he was a young priest. And by his own admission, he didn't believe in this stuff. So he was going on sabbatical to the Vatican, and his bishop said, I want you to take this course. He's like, oh, okay, I'll take the course. I think it was only a week-long course. And then you go out into the field with an elder and exorcisms. And if you've seen the movie, there's a part in the movie, because he said it was very true. He says, I was on set like just about all the time, making sure it was true as a consultant. And he said, I remember him telling me, if I remember correctly, because I've talked to him many times on the phone in the past. I've never met him in person. But I asked him, I said, Father, how real was it? And he said, well, he says, you saw the movie, Joe, right? I said, yeah, I saw it a few times and enjoyed it. He said, there's a scene where the person being exorcised coughs up a couple of nails, like 2-3 inch long nails. He goes, I still have the nails.
Oh God, see, what do you do with it? Put them in holy water. I mean, I could not, I asked you earlier, okay, what do you do when you leave someplace that is a negative spirit, not a demon, just negativity, to cleanse yourself that you don't carry it home to your family?
Well, it's a very good question. Before I even go, like before I went to this New York case, I didn't know what I was getting involved in. I actually had a good friend, Father Kenneth Torres, who's an exorcist. He lives in the Sacramento area. He flew in across the country on his own dime.
Wow.
He flew in because I said, Father, I don't know what I'm going to be faced with. I'm not an exorcist. I'm not clergy. I said, but I've been involved in them. You know, I've been the guy holding people down, you know. But I've been involved. I remember Bishop McKenna, before this exorcism that he was going to conduct, he met with us and he said, don't look at it. It now, not her or him. Don't look at it.
Okay.
If it addresses you, if it looks at you, if it says something to you, don't say
gauge.
anything.
Don't gauge.
Don't acknowledge it at all.
Okay.
Just because he goes, and I remember Father Thomas saying, there's only 3 questions that are really asked of the demon. You know, what is your name? Okay, and they have to give it up. They'll kick and scream and fight you, but eventually they got to give it up because it's not, you know, I, Joe Franke, command you to give me your name. No, it's I, Joe Franke, you know, in the name of Jesus Christ, command you. It is He who commands you. He is your creator. You need to answer to your master, basically. So he said, so the first question is, what is your name? So now once they reveal their name, now you've got like power over it. You know what you're dealing with, or who, or not who, but what. Is it a low-level demon? Is it a high-level demon? Is it Satan himself? Or Lucifer? And the second question is, how did you get in? Okay, demons can't just jump into your body. They have to be invited in, and that's where we come back to the Ouija board.
I was going to say, and how does an unassuming, you know, going about my normal day, invite a demon in? Unless you are truly evil and you want that power, most of us walk around.
Well, there's many ways, and sometimes it's unconsciously you do it, you know. But things like you watch these TV shows, and I remember watching this one show, and I won't mention what show, because I'm very respectful of that, but like, well, if this is the doorway to hell, why don't you rise up and get us? And I'm like,
oh, yeah, I hated that. Every time I was like, what are you asking
and I
for?
just went like, wow, I could have had a V8, you know? I'm like, I can't believe you just said that now. I say, I know it was said for showmanship.
Right, but...
And for the effect for television.
Right.
But the demons don't. You just invited.
Or they don't care.
They don't care,
There's
no.
an opening.
You just invited that in.
Yeah.
Okay, now people may disagree with me, and that's fine, but I've lived this for almost 40 years.
Yeah.
I've been involved with demons.
Yeah.
I was 23 years old, I think, when I was in a case in Shelton. I was picked up. I was 360 pounds. I was bigger than I am now. I was a weightlifter when I was younger and everything. I was picked up and thrown across the room about 12 feet, like from here to the wall. Slammed my shoulder and my head up against the wall, and then fell like a sack of potatoes.
I'll give you credit because that would have been the last time I would have been involved in anything because that would terrify me.
Well, this work is not for everyone.
No.
And I was terrified. People are like, oh, weren't you scared? I'm like, yes, I'm human.
Yeah,
I'm not superhuman.
Right.
I'm human. But at the time, I was scared, but I was pissed.
Yeah.
And I got up and called it every name in the book. And I'm like, is that all you got? I'm not afraid of you. And, you know, and then things started to quiet down. But I remember a 2-liter bottle of Coke came from the kitchen around the corner. I was in the living room. Clipped my nose to the point where my nose was bleeding. Didn't hit me head straight on, but it clipped my nose. And, you know, dishes were flying out of the cupboards. You know, chairs were stacking on the tables. This was very bad.
Yeah, no,
and the house was cleansed later on by the clergy, and was fine after that. But the family still moved.
But
they still
bloody nose, broken shoulder.
But yeah, I mean, that's probably the most, when people ask me, what is your most terrifying case? That's one of them.
Yeah.
Because I was I've been
physically
bitten,
touched. Yeah.
I've been punched, scratched, bitten, burned, thrown across the room, through my career. And I remember Ed telling me one day, he's like, you got to understand, Joe, He said, when you take a stick and you poke a tiger in the face enough times, it's going to take a swat at you.
Sure, sure.
I said, it's only going to take it a couple of times, and it's going to take a swat at you.
Yeah.
So these things, he said, these things know what we do, and they hate us. They hate us, number one, because we're made in God's image, which is now I have an attitude about that. I'm like, I'm a child of God. I'm made in God's image. I got him in my corner. Why should I be afraid of you?
Right.
Yes, you're stronger than I am. My physical strength is no match for demonic. They could pick up a refrigerator and throw it at me like nothing. But it's very rewarding work, because getting back to my story in New York, when we finished, and we found a bunch of natural evidence, like high EMF readings. You see all these gadgets out there and I don't want to poo-poo them. Your audience may get mad at me if they use them, but they're not proven to work. If you've got an EMF meter and you stick it in the middle of the room, and everybody's sitting around watching it and it goes off, that doesn't mean anything. The Earth is just one big magnet.
Yeah, you have magnetism in
your body. The Earth is just. What do you think protects us from the sun's radiation? The magnetic field. So I said, if you want to do a proper investigation and take baseline readings, ask the homeowner or the business owner, would you mind turning off the main power for 20 minutes or so and let us walk around? All right. So now, if the power's off, now you've got no power flowing, no juice flowing through the building. Now you got to turn off your walkie-talkies, turn off your cell phones, all these electronic gadgets. People are home like, oh, it's going off, I'm not touching it. Yeah, but you got a walkie-talkie over here, you got your cell phone in your pocket.
They're wired.
And a lot of this is just for effect. They're just YouTubers to get likes, and look, it's entertaining. I said, but don't falsely misrepresent yourself to a family that's frightened and looking for help.
Yeah.
I just had a case, if you want to hear about this one, recently, a neighbor of mine who I haven't met at the time. I hadn't met her. She posted on Facebook, and she said she was very leery about posting it for fear of retribution and
my husband didn't want to say anything about our house because he said
Right.
it'll help the resale value.
Well,
I'm not going to sell my house right away.
So she puts on Facebook, she goes, I need help. I've got this activity in my home, and it's bothering my 1-year-old. He's seeing this, whatever it is, and he's following it around the room, and he's screaming and crying. He's scared. The dog was hiding under the bed, scared.
That's a sign, yeah.
So the lights would be flickering, and she said one time she was making the baby's food for the day and had it on the counter. She walked over here, and she turns around, it's gone. Apport, it moved. She's looking all over for it. She goes in the dining room, she comes back, it's back where she left it. Something was trying to get her attention. It wasn't evil, So she posts this on Facebook, and all of a sudden, there's at least 48 comments. I remember the number 48. Oh, you need an exorcism. You need to call Father so-and-so. You need to call a paranormal team in there, and blah, 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 blah. You need to call the
Ghostbusters.
Yeah, it was crazy. And my daughter happened to see it. My daughter, who's very involved and helps me out a lot with my lectures and stuff. She's like, no, you need to call my father. Now literally I lived a half a mile around the corner from them. Never met him. However, the weird thing is the house that they bought, that they lived in, was my old friend who retired to Florida, lived there. He built the house. He lived there for 27 years with his family. His son grew up with my son playing baseball, and we were coaches and stuff. So I'm like, I know the house. I've had many meals there, So I said, well, Sarah, how long have you guys been there? She said, 3 years. I said, well, when did the activity start? She said, about 6 months after we moved in. I said, okay, now we have a point of origin. Let's go backwards. What happened? Did you lose a close family member? Well, yeah, my grandmother passed away. She was, I was very close to her. She was of Polish descent, spoke very little English. I said, do you have anything of your grandmother's in the home? She goes, yeah, I have a few things that were giving me jewelry, but she goes, I have my grandparents' old bed. Our bedroom set. She says nobody else wanted it, and I didn't want to get rid of it. She goes, but it's in our spare room because it smells like mothballs. I remember her telling me that. So I said, okay. I said, well, let's stay. Now, mind you, I didn't pack up the car, the mystery machine, and go over there and set up banks of computer equipment, and you don't need that stuff. Okay, the best piece of equipment in my arsenal is a 30-some-odd-year-old Sony magnetic tape recorder. I've got more evidence with that tape recorder than any digital recorder. You know, yes, I have some cameras and things, but I don't have these cat balls and, you know, the cat balls on the bed are lighting up. You know, look, if you want to have fun with that, that's fine. But I'm very serious about this, and this is what I do. I'm here to help people, and I'm here to educate people. I'm not here to entertain you. Although I try to be entertaining, you know, when I lecture. So anyway, so I said, Sarah, I said, well, I'll come over. I said, when's a good time for you? She goes, well, how about this Friday at 6 o'clock? Great. She goes, Matt will be home, you know. So I guess her husband got called into work. And she said, well, Joe, you could still come over. I said, no, your husband's not home. I haven't met you. I'm a big, scary animal. I don't want to. I said, no, out of respect for you. I said, we can reschedule. She's like, oh, okay. So, so I never ended up going over there. But on the phone, I asked her a lot of questions. And I said, I might have to ask you some personal questions. Do you mind? You know, and I do. But it's for a purpose, not because I'm nosy. It's because I need to know. Right. Do you drink? Are you taking any drugs or any medications that might cause hallucinations, things like that? We're going to ask some personal questions. And she had, no. I said, okay, well, I said, after all the questions you've answered, I'm thinking that this may be your grandmother that's coming to visit, in visitation. She's not there all the time. And she's watching after you and the baby. She never met the baby because she passed before the baby was born. And I said, that's a beautiful thing. There's not a demon in the house. I even called my friend who he was the fire chief in Wallingford.
Who's showing the house?
He's down in Florida. And I asked him, I said, I'm going to ask you a question. He knows what I do.
Yeah.
I said, I'm going to ask you a question. Don't laugh. He goes, when you guys lived in the house for 27 years, did you ever have anything paranormal? I knew the answer already because he would have called me.
Right.
And he's like, no, why do you ask? And I said, well, the folks that bought the house from you have contacted me with an issue. So now he's intrigued. And he's like, no, I'll check with the kid when he's grown children. I'll check with the family. So now he's calling me every couple of weeks saying, anything new, anything? I'm like, no. So a few weeks go by, and I hadn't heard from her. And I was getting a little worried. You know, no news is good news, though. So I finally get a hold of her. She's like, Joe, I'm just so sorry. We've been so busy. She goes, you know, what you told me to do, which is walk around the house, speaking to your grandmother as I'm speaking to you now. And she's like, well, should I say it in Polish or English? I said, doesn't matter. She'll understand you. I said, just thank her, acknowledge her presence, thank her for being there, thank you for looking out for the baby. But Grandma, you're scaring the baby. He doesn't understand. He sees you. He doesn't understand. Could you not do that anymore? So I talked to her 2 weeks later, and she's like, it worked.
And how sad for Grandma. She can't come around anymore.
She can come in visitation, but
not the baby.
Yeah, I said, it is my belief, I couldn't prove this. Nobody can prove this, by the way. There's nobody on this planet that can prove this, in my opinion. You know. And the first thing I tell my audience is, look, I don't know everything. I've been doing this almost 40 years. I know a lot. I said, but I don't know everything. And once in a while, somebody will ask me a question. I'm like, that's a very good question. I don't know the answer to it, but I'll try and find out for you. Unfortunately, I don't have my mentors anymore to ask. You know, but I do have a good friend, John Zaffis, who was there.
John Zaffis has the museum down in Stratford?
Yep, John is a very good friend. John was Ed and Lorraine's nephew.
I haven't met him, but
and he was their lead investigator on the case in Southington, actually. John and I had lunch about 2 months ago, and we hadn't seen each other in some time, even though we don't live that far apart. But he travels a lot. He does a lot of shows and stuff. And I wasn't at liberty to do that when I was working. So we had a long talk, and you know, I found out even more things about the family that I didn't know, even though I was part of the family. I was considered, you know, like their grandson. And that was precious to me. They weren't the world famous Warrens to me. They were just
They were your
Grandma
friends.
and Gramps.
They were your friends. Grandma and Grandpa,
But, you know, so my point in telling you this story, I'll circle back, is that I never even met these people, and I was able to help them. Just talking to her over the phone. They never even have a Zoom meeting. Talking to her over the phone. I said, Sarah, I'm right around the corner if you need me. Literally around the corner. I can walk to her house in like 15 minutes.
Yeah, she got ramped up by everybody saying it was demonic.
That's the thing is people meant well. I give them credit for that, but they were wrong.
Yeah.
And you don't want to just call in ABC Paranormal
Right,
because you
right.
don't know how much experience these folks have,
right.
and they can actually make it
Worse, if there is something there.
Right. Now, I know there's a lot of talented people out there. There's a lot of other people out there that do what I do, and they're very successful at it. I'm not putting anybody down. The people that I'm talking about know who they are.
Yeah.
They'll misrepresent themselves to get in. Oh, we got a case. They're all excited. Oh, I want to go. I want to go. Now you got 15 people descending on someone's house, and they're like, oh, what are all these people doing here? I've worked alone for many years. I don't, that's against what I teach. Don't ever go to a place alone.
Yeah.
I've done it alone when I didn't have my buddy that lives out in Bethel to come with me. Just not to investigate, but to sit at the table like I'm sitting here now, have a cup of coffee, and talk with the family. Tell me what's going on, okay? Because you may or may not have a paranormal affliction. Many times, very, very small percentage of the time, is it actually something paranormal? It's just something they don't understand.
I read about somebody who thought, they called the paranormal investigators in because they kept hearing this, what they thought was a voice. It was something wrong. Every time their heater went on.
So there was a natural
weird
explanation.
Noises. So that solved that. But I so appreciate you. Will you come back? Will you come
Absolutely.
back? You have so much to talk about.
Absolutely, anytime.
And let me just tell you again, this is Joe Franke, and he's the CIO of the Warren Legacy Foundation for Paranormal Research. If you have any problems, Joe's going to tell you how to get a hold of them, aren't you, Joe?
Sure.
Okay. Sure. You're going to talk to that camera over there.
So listen, folks. I have a social media page, Facebook page, just Joe Franke. But you can get me through the Warren Legacy Foundation. That's warrenlegacy.com, and you can send an email in, and my team there will know how to get a hold of me. You could also contact me at jfranke@warrenlegacy.com. That's JFRANKE @warrenlegacy.com is my personal email address. So if you need help, or you're scared, you're frightened, or you're just confused, give me a call. If I'll help you myself, or I'll put you in touch with one of our team members. We have many talented people in the foundation, and we all have the same goals. It's just to help people. And now in my later years, I like to do a lot of educating for whoever will listen. I do colleges, universities if they'll have me. I'll do your shows, or I'll do a lot of local libraries. I just finished my library segment for the year because now it's holiday season. However, I do them year round, so I'll be probably doing another round in the spring.
I'll be touching base with you again because we do have ran a very successful fundraiser for a shelter when we had a psychic in, and everybody's looking for money today. There's just a tough economy. But one more thing I want to say is, you're talking about the baby being scared. Our family is so used to weird things happening. I won't be calling you, but our family is so used to weird things happening. I have a video of our baby, one of our babies, very, very dramatically telling us about a man in her window. She was 2. Her window's on the 2nd floor. And then she saw a photo album. It was her great-grandfather who never met her. That's him.
That is so common.
So how do you not believe that? Right. I mean, this is she got no skin in the game.
It all comes down
scared.
to what you believe. And like I said earlier in the show, I said, all I ask of my audience, of the people I teach to, is have an open mind.
Right.
How is it possible? I say to my audience, how is it possible? How'd you all get here? And I'm not talking about, in your Honda. I'm talking about, how did you get here? Did you hatch?
In creation, how did you
whatever your beliefs are, and I respect everyone's beliefs. So I've dealt with people of all faiths. I've dealt with people with no faith. But I tell people, I like to coin a phrase from the movie Miracle on 34th Street. It's always stuck with me. Faith is believing in something that common sense tells you not to. Do you remember that line?
I do.
It is so true.
I do. Yeah.
Because when people have things happen in their home or place of business or something, or to them personally, that they can't explain, a lot of times they immediately go, I got a demon attached to me or something like that. And they'll go out and buy holy water, or they'll buy a crucifix. And I said,
sage the house, smudge the
well,
house.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, if it's demonic and you put sage, it'll just piss them off.
Thank you for that.
But I will say, I just want to say this quickly if I have time.
Yeah.
To go out and buy a crucifix, especially one that you don't have blessed, I said, and you put it around your neck, or you buy a wooden one that you hang up in the house. I said, that's nothing but a piece of metal around your neck. It means nothing unless you believe in what it symbolizes. It's the faith that's the power and your protection. It's not that piece of metal.
You can't try to change in the ninth inning,
You know?
right? You got to believe all the way through. Just can't just slap something religious icon on you. But
And I tell people, if you have a demon, you'll know it. If you have something negative, you'll know it. But if it's a friendly past family member just coming in visitation, acknowledge them, thank them, and say, we're good, thank you, move on. You know.
We miss you, we love you, but
Yeah.
you can go back and see the other family members now. Thank you so much for coming.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I never shut up.
Oh, no. Hey, listen, you are entertaining. This is Here and Hereafter, and we're happy you're watching. Joe will be back hopefully in the spring, and hopefully I'm sure with new cases. Not my house, though. Thanks, Joe.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
This was really fun.
My
This was
pleasure.
really fun. I love it.